We're back. It's the Horns Up Talking in Texas podcast. Fisher Desopoulos here, a half of the group, but have no fear. Very excited nonetheless. We beat the brakes, as Quan would say, off the Baylor Bears, heading to Waco to a tune of 38-6. Very close score called by Nicky Snacks Kreider, who had it at 38-10. He was 4 points off in favor, actually, of the Longhorns. Texas putting up a fat 38 in Waco. No points in the fourth quarter. All those points scored through three quarters, 21 in the second quarter, which is kind of wild. Love to see that out of our boys. And on the defensive side of the football, holding the Baylor Bears to 6 points. Quarterback changes was causing a quarterback change for the Baylor Bears. We really made life a living hell for Sawyer Robertson, Coach Aranda, like we predicted. Truthfully, a very emphatic win, the one we were looking for heading in to Big 12 play as we take on now ranked Kansas at home. What was your biggest takeaway, man, from the game?
There were so many good positives, but I think most importantly that our young talent is already making a real impact with this team. And Anthony Hill, he led our team in tackling, right? Derek Williams, Anthony Hill, and Malik Muhammad, who Malik Muhammad is, I think he had 4 tackles and he also had a pass breakup. Our freshman DB, they were of the 5 players who played the most snaps on this defense against this win in Waco. And I think, the embrace the hate tour in full effect. You could tell even just watching this game on TV that the Longhorns were there, that our fans showed up, they showed out. We were chatting with Quan throughout the game, and he was on the sideline with CDC and McConaughey. So just, obviously it's stone's throw away, right? An hour and a half north of Austin, Texas, but you still got to get there. You still got to get loud, and our fans did that. And, this is one of those where you can feel really good as a Longhorn fan, knowing that we might not play the Baylor Bears for another 15 years and it don't matter. And we're walking out of there with a victory. And we want to have that same feeling when we play the rest of these teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, I do want to stat correct you there on your lovely takeaways. Really good stuff about the young guys, especially on defense, which, we've been singing their praises all season, but it's good to continue to see them play this way on the road in Big 12 play. The only stat correction I have to give you, that photo I sent of Quan and CDC and McConaughey, unless they actually were on the sidelines, I didn't see them. That was from the OU game from my seats. I sent for context for everybody. I sent Alex and Nick and Quan were talking in our group text, and I sent a photo of Quan, who was sandwiched between CDC and McConaughey, and I could see him from like where the seats were at the OU game last year. And I texted, I was like, hopefully there's room on the sideline for the 3 of us when we head to the Natty in our after a couple of beers and tequila shots, courtesy of the bartenders standing up on the bar and pouring. Was it pouring it all over Utah's, where they poured all over the shots? I think you guys
not on me, but near me. Yeah,
near me in this splash zone. There's a little.
I didn't catch any. Yeah, no, I didn't catch any strays. But
good. Yeah, man, I think all really good points on the defensive side of the football. Again, we're a veteran team, but it's good to see the young guys get in the mix. I mean, I'll just keep riding on the defensive side of the football. Byron Murphy was absolutely fantastic. Another guy who we were wanting to see continue to put the pressure on the quarterback, get in the backfield. He had 2 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss. Him and T'Vondre Sweat are arguably the best interior lineman duo in the nation, which is crazy to think that we have that, with all of our weapons and all of our all of the offensive line recruiting we've done. Obviously Quinn, 9 touchdowns, 0 picks to start the season, but the 2 biggest stalwarts maybe and the 2 biggest MVPs could be our 2 interior defensive linemen, and Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. Both those guys have been absolutely fantastic. And then continuing down the board, Bush, Broughton, Finkley, guys who we don't necessarily talk about all the time. When they got their numbers called, they made the most of their playing time, each of them having a sack as well, which is something that's great to see. But yeah, I mean, look, Malik Muhammad, Gavin Holmes, a guy who we've mentioned previously, a transfer from Wake Forest, cornerback. It's good to see him really getting some playing time and into the fold. And it continues to showcase our depth in defensive backfields, And it's not just going to be Barron. It's not just going to be Thompson that makes all the plays. We have Watts, we have Holmes, and we have obviously Malik Muhammad. And Gabenda and Ford made themselves known as always. Both those guys' presence is so huge. Jalen Ford coming away with an interception in this one from the linebacking spot. He had dropped one in the Bama game, but it was good to see him come away with an interception against the Baylor Bears. And, I want to highlight the offense and I want to talk about how good Brooks and Quinn were, but you really can't, spend enough time almost on the defense. It's such a rarity. Like when I was setting up to, record, and I was thinking through, like my thoughts on the game and whatnot. I don't like, we either play Baylor really tight or we lose to Baylor. Since our tenure as Texas Longhorns, we haven't seen us go to Waco and absolutely kick the crap out of him. I don't think. Like I would have to there may have been a time or two where we've decimated them like this, probably in Matt Rule's first year. Actually, I would have, if I had to guess, when they were like 1-11. But by and large, the Baylor Bears has been unbelievably competitive. They have been in the playoff or Big 12 title hunt as much, if not probably more than we have. So for us to come in, I know they're ailing and licking their wounds a bit this season, but still, for us to go into Waco in a game where they are bragging about selling out their stadium, the most students they've had at a game, all this, and we're seeing on Twitter all their braggadocious bits about how many people are going to be at this game in green and yellow, for us to go into their house and absolutely wipe the floor with them. They couldn't do anything on offense. Anything. Like we were like, oh, we're going to get the trick plays. No, we were able to use our trick plays and test those things out because we were beating them so badly on defense.
Yeah. Which, alluding to the Xavier Worthy wide receiver pass that he threw to Jatavion Sanders, who, last game did not have a catch against the Wyoming Cowboys. This game, he has 5 catches for 110 yards. So I loved to see the adjustment there to make sure that one of our best playmakers gets involved. And he had that 49-yard pass that he caught. And he also had the one-handed snag that will definitely be on his NFL highlight tape that was thrown to Quinn, and he beat the linebacker in single coverage and then took it up the left sideline. Look, we did exactly what we needed to do. I thought clearly we had an excellent game plan. We talked with, you, myself, Quan, and Nick last week about how this team in their previous game ran the ball incredibly effectively, and to no surprise, because they have their backup quarterback in there. What we did was we eliminated the run from the outright. Their running back ran for 21 yards, 17 yards. You'd have to check me on that. I think, yeah, Pendergrass was 6 for 21 yards. Yep. And then RJ Martinez ran for 22 when he came in for Sawyer Robinson later in the game, but we forced their backup quarterback to beat us. He had one throw of 30 plus yards up the right sideline. That was an excellent pass, incredibly accurate. And other than that, we were breathing down his neck. We were constantly pressuring the QB, but we were so effective against the run that I think it allowed us to really have our playmakers shine on the outside, on the edge. And of course, our DBs and our linebacking core are incredibly impressive week in, week out. But I think that to me is just Sark and PK coming up with an excellent game plan to make a backup quarterback beat you, right? Mm-hmm. And he ends up throwing an interception. You've already mentioned that that Ford was able to bring in. So I really liked what I saw from there. And then just from the offensive side, we asked of the Horns to get to the ground and pound early in this game. And we did. And, the first score was that 40-yard touchdown run by Jonathan Brooks. And Baxter had our second score, right? We were a very balanced attack. We had 500 plus yards of total offense, 150 plus on the ground, 300 plus in the air. If we do that every single game, we are going to be a handful for any team that we're playing, whether they're KU next week or Oklahoma, who once again looked really, really good. The one thing that I asked last week was to increase our third down conversion rate, and we did not do that. We were 3 for 9 on third downs. So I expect that will come to kick us in the rear when we play a tougher opponent. We'll see if that's, some element that's crucial into just the final score of the Kansas game. We'll of course preview that later in the week, but that was one thing that I wanted to see us correct. And I know you had a bit of a gripe on the special teams as well. And I'll kind of turn it over to you there, Josh.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the glaring issues is Worthy. I know he's arguably our best receiver. He is our best receiver, but having him on the special teams punt return just isn't working out. I know he has the athleticism to do it, but he muffed the punt, which was costly. And
He did have a 30+ yard return that if there wasn't for a shoestring tackle, he would have taken that to the house. So I
mean, but the athleticism is there, but we also have guys like Keelan Robinson and other guys we could throw back there. I just don't necessarily think he's that great in the punt game. I think his athleticism and his speed is phenomenal. And if he gets that breakaway and he's in the open field, of course he's going to make a play and have a big burst.
But he did, though. Like, that's productivity. I think there's hypotheticals of like, yes, Keelan's very fast, but I haven't seen Keelan go back there and return a punt for 30+ yards. Maybe he needs to get more opportunities. I think that Worthy has the ability to course correct and make sure that, he's being very sure-handed with the football because he's like that as a receiver. But is it more so that you take issue with the fact that like he's being utilized in so many different ways in the offense that he doesn't necessarily need to be back there?
We don't need it. I just don't think he calls a good game back there, to be honest. There's times where the fair catches, the play he plays things. I just consistently don't think he does a very good job of it. I'm just, great.
Yeah, the return that he took for 30 yards, he took off the ground. He didn't even take that out of the air. So even that is a risky element to throw in there, right? Because if it takes one odd bounce, then it bounces off your hands, and now there's another opportunity for the Baylor Bears to hop onto that ball. So I get what you're saying. I think you lose the ability of us taking one to the house, or that percentage probably decreases, even if it's Keelan back there, because Worthy is a little bit bigger. He's not huge, but he is bigger than Keelan, right? And he's able to break through some of those leg tackles a little bit better than Keelan is.
Sure, he's a better player. He's an NFL caliber player. I just would rather, at this point, have a sure hand back there. I would rather have a shorthand guy back there and let the offense come back out in the fields, especially the way the offense is playing. The way that Jonathan Brooks, who we haven't mentioned yet, but we obviously should, because we've been pining for a true RB1, and we officially have one. If we didn't have it last week, back-to-back 100-yard games. This one on the road. Brooks is our guy, so we have a good run game established. Cedric Baxter is only going to get healthier as the weeks go on, hopefully. Saunders is firmly in the mix. Worthy kind of had a quiet game. He obviously had the pass. He did have a touchdown, but other than that, he didn't boom you for yards, but I don't think he necessarily needed to. It was a very controlled game by Quinn, Brooks, Sark, and the offense. So I'm so confident in our offense and our ability to move the ball and do different things on offense and beat you in so many different ways. I'd rather just have someone back there, catch it, and go home. Easy peasy, squeezy. That's how I just feel about it. But yeah, Brooks, again, he's awesome, man. He's legit.
He's fantastic. I think when he gets to that second level, linebackers and DBs have a tough time keeping up with him. And I think he runs really, really hard. We got so used to Bijan Robinson breaking arm tackles left, right, front, and center. And this guy can do it too. He is a tough runner. He fights for extra yardage. And I've been really, really impressed. I like how we were very versatile, and we were providing looks and opportunities for so many different guys on our offense. Like, you're right. Xavier, he had an opening catch in the opening drive, which can put some pressure on the defense because now you have to deal with him and you have to consider him every single route that he's running. And then he had a quiet game the rest of the game because we ended up going Jatavian's way. But I like that he got that opportunity to score that touchdown at the end to kind of, appease parties, right? We know that when there's a lot of mouths to feed, oftentimes, there can be a little bit of bickering and some uncertainty and unhappiness sometimes. This doesn't seem to be the case because I think we can acknowledge that the way that Sark is running this program right now and coaching this team, everybody is buying in, everybody is playing together. But it is nice that Worthy got to have that kind of little prize at the end of the game. Here's your touchdown. Same thing with Baxter. And just keeping those guys involved. And when we get into those games where it will be a little bit closer, having them go 110% without any kind of thought in the back of their head of like, is another guy going to take my job? Like, what's going on there? Jonte Cook had a 51-yard catch. That was cool to see. That was later in the game after, the game had already gotten out of Baylor's hands. But I just like seeing different guys get involved. And especially as I mentioned with my first takeaway, those young guys, because it just shows any recruit that is interested, that if you get on the 40 acres and you are a part of the Texas Longhorn football team and you are putting in the work and you are impressing the coaches, you can get out there on game day and you can make a real impact year one as a freshman. It is possible.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see. And obviously on Sunday, we got some great recruiting news too, which
That we did.
Yeah.
That we did. I mean, look, getting Brandon Baker out of Mater Dei, getting a kid from California, like obviously Sark has roots in the West Coast and the Pac-12, like coaching at Washington, coaching at USC, of course. But going and getting a kid like Brandon Baker, an offensive tackle to come in and he's a massive 4-star, 5-star, depending where you check. Like it's truly a massive haul for, no pun intended, for Sark and co. And you're also keeping him away from teams that probably should have gotten him. Like Oregon probably should have been in the mix. USC should have been in the mix a lot heavier. Not that they weren't, but they probably should have had their claws sunk in a bit harder on a guy like that. The fact that we can go to California and get the top offensive tackle is pretty remarkable out of Coach Sarkisian.
Yeah, Oregon was his number 2 team on the list. And look, they had an
first, your last, baby.
That's right. And they had an absolutely dominant win against the Colorado Buffaloes, where their team made a real statement about how they are primed to make college football playoff run this year. Yes, Bo Nix will no longer be there at the end of this year, but just from a on-field play standpoint, like that shows a recruit a lot, right? But we did the exact same thing. And that, to me, the fact that he ends up signing with us on Sunday shows that we did everything else that we needed to get him to commit to the Texas Longhorns. I'm super excited about that. Yeah, you mentioned he's a 4-star on ESPN. He's a 5-star on 247. I think he's 3rd in the rankings of Banks and just the composite score, Banks and Campbell, right? Who we got in 2022's class, both who are sophomores now and are playing excellent football. So, they are not headed anywhere. They're not going to the NFL yet, but the fact that all 3 of those guys could be playing together is really, really exciting just from an offensive line standpoint for our Texas Longhorns. And you mentioned really important. It's really important for us to hit the California pipeline, because it's not something we have not recruited, especially from a school like Mater Dei. We have not recruited there very, very well. The first recruit that we got that committed to the Texas Longhorns was Brew McCoy in 2019. And, look who we've got since then, right? And a lot of that has to do with Chris Jackson, who is our wide receivers coach, who, go figure, is a Mater Dei alum, right? It's putting the puzzle pieces together, and that's a great job and a great hire by Sarkisian. And
thank you for giving us that tidbit, Toss. It's important to know, not to cut you, but it's very important to know that type of thing. So it's a really good tidbit to add.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And now we have the number 11 class ranking for 2024. So that's exciting. And hopefully we go up and up and up. I honestly think it's a little underrated. Like, I think we should already be higher than that.
I don't get that. Well, I'm looking at, I just didn't know people go, like, people love 24/7. I just had ESPN up. On ESPN, according to them, the top 10, Clemson, we have Colin Simmons, Clemson, the Buckeyes, A&M, NOU, and Tennessee all have a player in the top 10. Georgia has 2. They have the top 2, and then Bama has the next 2. So their inclusion, Justin Williams from Conroe, Texas to Georgia kind of stings. And then Micah Hudson from Temple, like going to Texas Tech. We've spoken about that before. Is tough. We get Kobe Black, things change, right? Yep. So we get Kobe Black. It's a massive recruit. Terry Bussey, I think, is making the mistake and going to A&M. It looks like that's where he's crystal ball. But if we get the kid from St. Louis University, Ryan Wingo, if we get that receiver and we get Kobe Black, that's going to propel us into the range of, like, I think Ohio State's in there, just judging by like what I'm seeing. Obviously, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama probably have some of the top classes right now. FSU's in the mix. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, dude, like, I don't know. Like, we could really have another top 5 class and a class of impact players. Like, if you're one of these guys, like, and you see how these, like you were saying, these young players are playing, right? If you're Kobe Black and you see Malik Muhammad playing as a freshman, like, you're obviously going to be like, wait a second, I might be inclined to be a part of that.
Yeah.
You know, like, if I'm good enough, which I think I am, I'm going to get time. I do want to back to the current team, the number one rated interior defensive lineman, rated interior defensive lineman in all of college football is Devondre Sweat.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised. Not surprised whatsoever. And I mean, you talked about Byron Murphy earlier and what he does as an interior defensive lineman, but he also lined up as the fullback on Jonathan Brooks' second touchdown run, which is an advancement of what we saw him. He scored that big man touchdown against Wyoming, and then the next week he's involved in another goal line package. So now we're just showing different looks, right? So Kansas next week and Oklahoma the following week, you know, we get him involved in that goal line package. They don't know what we're going to do. So I love that, you know, again, just the versatility, the unpredictability of what Sarkisian is doing on the offensive side. But starting off simple with running the football and then getting creative later on. And we talked about how Baylor was going to throw, you know, all different kinds of haymakers at us from an offensive standpoint. I think we saw, was there a wide receiver double pass that they tried and failed?
Yeah,
it was attempted wide receiver double pass. I think he just ended up running it for like 3 yards because he knew he didn't have a look downfield.
They didn't have anything going, dude.
Right.
To be honest, like, and I don't care. I'll admit this. There was like, my attention started to deviate towards the Buckeye Notre Dame game because we were beating them that badly. Like, if I didn't have to cover our team, this is a game you could turn off in the third quarter and be happy about, to be honest, and like not feel like a bad fan. I know we always say eyes to eyes and, like, you know, stay for the fourth quarter and whatnot, but we're not at the game. If you're watching at home and we beat them that badly, like, you could go take the fourth quarter off, grill some steaks, and catch the end of, like, because I do want to do a quick wrap around. That Buckeye Notre Dame game was uninspiring for both offenses, for both quarterbacks, especially Sam Hartman, who had a lot of faith in. Kudos to you. You called that Ohio State defense coming up big, and that they did. But that game was wild. The game you said, Oregon making a massive statement, USC going on the road against a broken ASU team and looking pedestrian. That was troublesome for them. The Washington State-Oregon State game ended up being a slobber knocker, which, you know, I think a lot of people anticipated. Very exciting to see. Washington State's one of those teams that no one's really talking about in the Pac-12 that could end up playing spoiler for somebody. And then Bama, back to business at home versus Ole Miss. That defense really coming in and shutting Lane Kiffin and Jackson Dart down.
Shaky first half, though, from them.
But both teams were shaky.
Sure.
I was unimpressed by Ole Miss. I had a lot more faith in them. I wanted more out of Ole Miss, and it didn't come to it didn't happen. And then,
I mean, LSU had a really close win against Arkansas, who a lot of people
FSU.
don't think are FSU had a close win against Clemson.
They lost the game, by the way. FSU lost to Clemson, and the gods came down and blew that football away.
Yeah, I mean, look, Clemson lost week 1. I think they're a better team than what we saw week 1 for them. But now at this point, they've got 2 losses under their belt, and it's next to impossible for them to make some sort of comeback here at the CFP. I mean, I just don't see that happening whatsoever for them. Yeah, I mean, look, Washington State, you mentioned, North Carolina, Duke, Miami, like all those teams are undefeated still. Utah still undefeated. And of course, Oklahoma, you know, they made quick work, and they have made quick work of every one of their opponents this year. And, you know,
you don't think the work could have been quicker?
It could have been, but I mean, look, they did what they needed to do, you know, and no, I don't think it could have been that much quicker. I think Cincinnati's a solid team. I think they're well coached. I know they're 2-2, and their record doesn't necessarily reflect they're a great football team, but we know what their program has been in the last 4 to 5 years. And I think you got to, you know, at least tip your cap a little bit to them. Probably a similar situation as, you know, what we saw against Wyoming. And our final score reflected a little bit more in our favor, and their final score, you know, reflected a little bit less in their favor. But I think Cincinnati's probably a better team than Wyoming as well.
Sure.
But all that to say, like, we take it 1 week at a time. We'll get into it later this week, as I mentioned before, when we preview the Kansas game, who now have, you know, Jalen Daniels is back, right?
They're ranked, man. They're undefeated and ranked. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at a lot of these games. There's a lot of interesting game. Like Washington heads to a 3-1 Arizona. Like Notre Dame at 4-1 heads to a 4-0 Duke. Utah, who you just brought up at 4-0, they head to a 3-1 Oregon State, who just hung some points up, like and try to get some comeback going.
USC plays Colorado. Like Colorado just got trounced by Oregon, but who knows? Do I think that they're going to give two pitiful performances in a row? The Buffaloes, not two pitiful performances. Do I think USC should win that game? Absolutely. But do I think USC is more vulnerable now than I did before they played Arizona State? Yes, to that as well. So, there are some tough tests ahead for all these ranked teams here, and what we have to do is just take care of business.
Tigers versus the Rebels. The LSU heads to Ole Miss, the Grove, which is apparently everyone says the best place in the world to watch a game, and then Florida, Kentucky. Like Kentucky's undefeated. Like, we just have to take care of business. But there are some surprise teams like so far, like Mizzou. Ranked. Kind of crazy. 4-0. Fresno State is ranked. I don't know why. Why are they ranked and Kentucky's not? I don't know. I guess they don't want to give too much love to the SEC. Kind of weird.
Yeah, 20 through 23, all four of those teams are SEC squads. Just looking at the AP poll right now, and it's just like, wow, what's the total count? So we got Georgia. You got Bama, LSU. There's 3, and then 4 more, so 7 total SEC schools. It's a pretty good number there. And you've got us, you've got OU, and then you've got
nobody. Kansas, thank God. Yeah, we have 3.
So 3.
And then how many quickly in the ACC? Miami, Duke, UNC is 3. Clemson's dropped. They have 4. And then the Pac-12 has Washington, USC, Oregon, Utah. That's 4. Washington State's 5, and they dropped Oregon State. No, they didn't. 6. So they have 6, and then Big Ten is kind of like top heavy. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. That's 3. That's it.
And then that's it. Yeah. I mean, look, if you mentioned it, I completely agree. Especially if people who are listening were watching at home, and you tuned out in the middle of the third quarter, or had it on in the background, but we're doing something else in your house. Like, I don't blame you. But one thing you did miss is the Baylor Bears not converting on 4th and goal because our defense made great plays.
Yeah.
This game could have, final score ended up being 38-6, very close to Nicky Snacks Kreider's prediction. Again, shout out to him.
And his family, of course.
And his fam, but it could have been 38-13, right? If they had gotten one of those and converted, but they did not, because our guys were ready to play and they did not give up on any down. The fact that we played all 4 quarters and we played with that pride, that's and on the road too. That's the best thing for me to watch as a Texas football fan. So excited to see what we do against the Jayhawks, and we will be back later this week with the Quan Cosby and maybe a special guest.
Returning special guest, so get excited. And of course, the DJ himself, Snacks Kreider. Fisher Desopoulos, Toss, hook 'em horns, man. We are 4-0. Wild.
4-0.
4s.